Introduction and public warning. Are you ready for what's coming? Most people go about their lives as if everything will stay exactly the same. They wake up, go to work, pay bills, make plans for the future, without realizing that the world, right now, is on the verge of one of the greatest economic shifts in modern history. This isn't fear-mongering. It's a reality already knocking at the door, and it could catch you completely off guard. Robert Kiyosaki, author of the best-selling Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and renowned economist Richard Duncan, have been warning for years about an approaching financial collapse. And the scariest part isn't the collapse itself. It's the fact that almost no one is prepared for it. The global economy is out of balance. Inflation is out of control. Worldwide public debt has reached unsustainable levels. Yet, most people still believe things will somehow fix themselves. The real question is, will you wait to be caught by surprise, or will you take control now? In this video, you will understand why the current financial system is broken, how political and economic decisions are pushing ordinary people into poverty, and what you can and must do not just to survive the storm, but to thrive in the middle of it. This isn't just about numbers. It's about your life, your family, your future, your power to choose. You'll discover how financial education has become the new form of self-defense in the 21st century, how the rich use debt as a growth tool, why keeping your money in the bank is more dangerous than it seems, and which industries tend to grow when everything else is falling apart. If you're tired of magical promises and are looking for a direct, realistic, and strategic approach to protect yourself and succeed in times of crisis, then this video is for you. And best of all, the time to act is now. Because when the collapse hits, it'll be too late to start preparing. But if you stay with us until the end, you'll be among the few who know exactly what to do. The beginning of the global economic crisis. If the crisis hasn't reached your doorstep yet, don't be fooled. It's on its way. The global economy has reached an unprecedented crossroads. We're facing a scenario where inflation, economic stagnation, rising interest rates, collapsing credit systems, and excessive debt are combining into an explosive cocktail. And worst of all, it's being fueled by political decisions that ignore long-term consequences in favor of short-term interests. In recent years, governments around the world have implemented unprecedented stimulus policy. We went down the path of injecting trillions of dollars, euros, and other currencies into the economy to avoid collapse during crises like the pandemic. In the short term, this reckless money printing seemed like the perfect solution. But now we're facing the bitter consequences: runaway inflation, asset bubbles in financial markets, and a population drowning in debt. What makes this crisis even more dangerous is that, unlike previous moments in history, this time there is no reliable rescue plan. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the US, have already raised interest rates to try to control inflation, but that ends up choking credit, discouraging investment, and cooling off consumer spending. This monetary tightening is causing a global economic slowdown. Europe is on the verge of recession. The US faces an unpayable public debt, and emerging countries are seeing their currencies devalue at alarming speed. China's economy is also showing signs of weakening, which directly impacts supply chains and global trade. At the same time, the stock markets are living a dangerous dichotomy: inflated valuations with no solid economic foundation. Many companies are overvalued, operating at a loss, and surviving only on expectations of future growth. Expectations that are becoming increasingly fragile as the macroeconomic picture deteriorates. Another critical point is the debt market. Governments and corporations are drowning in debt, and higher interest rates mean it's becoming more expensive to refinance what they owe. This puts not just investors at risk, but entire systems. What happens when a massive corporation or country can't pay its debt? A ripple effect. One piece falls, and the whole domino chain goes down with it. There's also a key psychological factor at play: a false sense of security. People continue to buy, borrow, and consume as if nothing is happening. But the signs are everywhere: shrinking purchasing power, rising cost of living, growing unemployment, and more people relying on loans just to cover basic expenses. It's what KIYOSAKI calls a silent crisis. It doesn't explode like an earthquake. It erodes everything slowly, like a leak that eats away at a house's foundation while the people inside don't notice. And here's the crucial point: those waiting for the government to fix everything will be disappointed. History has shown us, time and again, that in times of crisis, governments bail out banks, strategic corporations, and elites, while the average citizen is left to pick up the tab. So, what should you do? First and foremost, you need to understand that the crisis isn't an invincible monster. It's a predictable scenario for those who know how to read the signs. If you can see what's happening, you're already ahead. But seeing is not enough. You need to act. And that's where the next key of this video comes in: understanding how political decisions, especially around energy and fiscal policy, directly impact your wallet, and how you can start protecting yourself today. How government policies affect your wallet. Have you ever stopped to think that decisions made by political leaders thousands of miles away from where you live might be directly linked to your rising grocery bill, fuel prices, or the difficulty of getting a loan? Because that's exactly what's happening. The crisis we're experiencing today didn't come out of nowhere. It is the direct result of a series of poor, or deliberate, economic and political decisions that primarily affect the poor and middle class. And perhaps the biggest problem isn't the impact of these decisions themselves, but the fact that most people have no idea how they affect their daily lives. Let's start with a concrete example: the shutdown of the Keystone XL pipeline in the United States. This was one of the country's largest energy infrastructure projects, designed to transport crude oil from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. By canceling it, the government drastically reduced the domestic oil supply. The result? Oil prices skyrocketed, and with that, the cost of fuel, transportation, agricultural production, and of course retail consumption all went up. But oil isn't just fuel for cars. It's the backbone of an industrial economy. It's found in fertilizers, plastics, medicine, hygiene products, clothing, and packaged food. When oil prices go up, everything goes up. And this inflation isn't spontaneous. It's the direct consequence of political decisions. On top of that, many governments have taken restrictive stances against new oil drilling and natural resource exploration. This creates instability in the energy market, reduces supply, raises prices, and deepens inequality. Who suffers the most from this? You, me, ordinary people. These so-called green energy policies, though promoted as sustainable, are being implemented abruptly, without transition or proper planning. And like any drastic shift, those who pay the price are the ones with no financial cushion. Now let's talk about monetary policy. Central banks, especially the Federal Reserve, have printed trillions of dollars in recent years. This massive creation of money was marketed as stimulus or an emergency response to the pandemic. But what really happened was a dilution of the currency's value. It's simple economics. The more money there is in circulation, the less each unit is worth. That's called inflation, and it's an invisible, cruel tax that hits the poor the hardest. If you live on a fixed income, every dollar you earn is worth less than it was a year ago. You buy less, save less, and work harder just to maintain your standard of living. Meanwhile, those who hold assets, real estate, stocks, businesses, gold, saw their wealth rise with inflation. Why? Because real assets increase in value as money loses value. And who owns those assets? The wealthy. That's the formula of modern inequality. Governments print money. The rich receive it first through investments and asset gains, and the poor are left with the trail of inflation. But it doesn't stop there. Tax hikes are part of the equation too. In times of crisis, many governments turn to raising taxes as a quick fix. But that quick fix is a long-term poison. Instead of stimulating the economy, it discourages spending and investment. And once again, the ones who suffer are small business owners, workers, and entrepreneurs already struggling to stay afloat. You might be asking, but shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't the government protect the most vulnerable? In theory, yes, but in practice, it's a different story. Decisions are made based on political interests, corporate lobbying, ideological agendas, and pressure from financial groups. And you, who aren't sitting at those decision-making tables, end up footing the bill. And the worst part? It all happens almost invisibly. Inflation doesn't hit like a tsunami. It seeps in like a silent leak. You feel the impact over time, until what used to be affordable becomes a luxury. That weekend outing no longer fits in the budget. That installment purchase turns into a trap. That's why understanding the connection between political decisions and your personal finances isn't a luxury. It's an urgent necessity. You need to know that when a politician announces a new law, an economic package, or a decision on interest rates or energy, it's not something distant. It could mean your rent going up, a benefit being cut, or even your job being at risk. The good news is, once you understand how this system works, you can start positioning yourself more strategically. You don't have to be a victim anymore. You can become the protagonist. And that's what we'll talk about in the next chapter. How inflation, driven by these political decisions, impacts different social classes, and how the wealthy manage to profit from it while everyone else loses purchasing power. The impact of inflation on social classes. As we've seen, political decisions have a direct and profound effect on your wallet. But the real impact of these policies, and especially inflation, is not the same for everyone. In fact, inflation lays bare one of the greatest truths of today's financial system. It was designed to benefit those already at the top. Have you ever noticed how, during times of crisis, the wealthy seem to keep thriving while most people sink deeper into debt, cuts, and insecurity? That's no coincidence. Inflation is not just a general rise in prices. It's a silent transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. Think about it. When the value of money falls, prices rise. A liter of milk, a bus ticket, rent, the electricity bill, everything gets more expensive. But most people's salaries don't keep up. What you could buy with 1,000 reais 2 years ago now barely covers half a month's expenses. Your money is worth less, your labor is worth less, and your quality of life plummets. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin. Imagine someone who owns assets, real estate, stocks, gold, businesses. When inflation rises, the value of these assets rises too. Rents increase, stock prices adjust upward. Gold appreciates as a safe haven. The result? That person grows wealthier, often without doing anything except holding their assets. That's why KIYOSAKI says, inflation is a tax that makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. And he's right. The system is built to reward those who understand the game and punish those who simply work for money. The average worker, who depends on a fixed salary, suffers the most. Their income doesn't rise at the same pace as prices. Their essential expenses, food, transportation, rent, eat up a larger and larger share of their paycheck. And to try to maintain their lifestyle, they go into debt. They overdraw their bank accounts. They take out loans. They make minimum payments on credit cards. And where do all those interest payments go? Straight to the banks, which, by the way, don't are among the biggest beneficiaries of high interest rate policies during times of inflation. On top of that, the poor and middle class usually save what little money they have in savings accounts or checking accounts, and that money, sitting idle, loses value month after month. Meanwhile, the rich, with access to information, education, and financial tools, protect themselves with assets that appreciate even during a crisis. We're facing a system that isn't just unfair, it's cruel. A system where the harder you work, the less you earn. Where saving cash means losing wealth. And where those who understand the rules position themselves to profit, while everyone else struggles just to survive. And it doesn't stop there. Inflation also hits small businesses brutally. Costs for raw materials, transportation, energy, and employees skyrocket. But customers' purchasing power drops. This means entrepreneurs must raise prices to survive, but customers can't afford to pay. The result? Declining sales, layoffs, bankruptcies. Meanwhile, large corporations, with access to cheap credit and advanced financial strategies, are able to weather the storm and even expand their market share. In other words, inflation also concentrates economic power. It doesn't just erode your salary, it erodes your freedom, your ability to choose, your stability. And it does it invisibly, slowly, without making headlines. That's why it's so dangerous. And then comes the most important question. What can you do about it? The answer isn't simple, but it starts with something fundamental. You need to stop playing the loser's game. You need to move out of the victim's seat and learn to use the same tools the wealthy use to protect themselves. You need to invest in real assets. You need to learn how to generate passive income. You need to understand the value of time, compound interest, diversification, and strategic planning. You need to stop thinking about saving money and start thinking about building wealth. And above all, you need to invest in financial education. Because without it, every crisis will hit you like an earthquake. With it, every crisis will become an opportunity. In the next chapter, we're going even deeper into this unfair structure. And we'll explore how the very currency we use, the dollar, has become both a tool of control and a source of vulnerability. We'll reveal why the dollar might be on the brink of collapse, and what that means for you, even if you don't live in the United States. The dollar crisis and the loss of confidence. So far, we've talked about inflation, inequality, and the impact of public policies. But there's a central element in this entire system that few people understand, and that could bring everything crashing down at once. The dollar. For decades, the dollar was synonymous with safety, the strong currency, the global standard, the benchmark for international trade. But that's changing, and fast. Why? Because the dollar itself is no longer what it used to be. In 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon made a decision that forever changed the global financial system. He detached the dollar from gold. Until that point, every printed dollar was backed by gold held in government reserves. In other words, money had real, tangible value. After that break, the dollar became based on trust and on debt. This shift might sound technical, but it was profound. From that moment on, the United States, and later other countries, started printing unlimited amounts of money, creating wealth out of thin air, backed only by debt securities. This means that today, the most powerful currency in the world doesn't represent a real asset. It represents a promise to pay. And as we know, promises can be broken. For a long time, the world accepted this system. After all, the dollar was accepted everywhere. It was the global reserve currency, used for international trade, oil, gold, contracts, and investments. But that acceptance is weakening. Trust is running out. Countries like China and Russia have already been unloading their dollar reserves, diversifying into gold and signing trade agreements using local currency. They are actively trying to reduce their dependency on the US-dominated financial system, controlled by institutions like the Federal Reserve and SWIFT. What's at stake here is not just the value of the dollar. It's the geopolitical power it represents. And when the foundation of a system begins to crack, everything else starts to shake. Now think about this. If the dollar falls, if it loses its position as the world's reference currency, what happens? First, the United States will no longer be able to finance its debt without consequences. Today, the US prints dollars to pay interest on its own debt. This only works because the world still accepts the dollar. If that cycle breaks, the debt becomes unsustainable. Second, the value of the dollar could plummet. That would directly hit Americans' purchasing power and indirectly affect every country that holds dollar reserves or depends on dollar-based international transactions. Third, the consequences would be global. A collapse of the dollar would impact banks, stock markets, pension funds, insurance companies, and governments worldwide. Currency crises would erupt. Global trade would face massive shocks. There would be a rush toward real assets like gold, land, real estate, and commodities. But perhaps the most worrying part is that most people aren't even remotely prepared for this. They believe it will never happen, that the system will somehow correct itself. But history tells a different story. Every fiat currency, meaning a currency not backed by tangible assets, has eventually failed. Every single one. And the dollar could be next. And if you think this won't affect you, think again. Your local economy is tied to the dollar, directly or indirectly. The price of gasoline, imported food, technology, exchange rates, investments, all of it depends, in part, on the dollar's stability. If it falls, your money loses value. Your costs rise. Your life changes. That's why many economists warn the dollar crisis isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a matter of time. And the signs are already everywhere. But here's the important part. This potential crisis also represents an opportunity. Those who understand this movement and act now can protect, and even grow, their wealth. How? By investing in assets outside the fiat system, such as physical gold, real estate, productive assets, and carefully selected cryptocurrency. By diversifying income streams and safeguarding part of their wealth in forms that don't depend on blind trust in an inflating currency. The dollar crisis could be the trigger for a major economic reset, and those who are prepared for this transition will be several steps ahead. That's exactly why, in the next chapter, we'll dive into how the Federal Reserve, the world's most powerful central bank, is accelerating this process by pulling money out of the system and launching what many are calling the Great Monetary Contraction. What does this mean? That the next market crashes could be more abrupt than ever, and that today's safe assets could plummet. The Federal Reserve's shift and the threat to assets. In the previous chapters, we explored how the dollar became a debt-based currency and how its potential downfall poses a global threat. But to truly understand what's about to happen to the markets and to your wallet, you need to closely watch the moves of the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. For most of the past decades, the Fed's policy was one of monetary expansion. That means pumping money into the economy, buying assets, lowering interest rates, and injecting liquidity into the system. This approach, also known as quantitative easing, supported the markets during crises like the 2008 crash and the 2020 pandemic. But now, the tide has turned. Faced with uncontrollable inflation, the Federal Reserve is taking the opposite route, monetary contraction. In other words, instead of injecting money, it's now pulling liquidity out of the system, and that changes everything. This withdrawal is happening in two main ways. 1. Raising interest rates, making credit more expensive, and reducing both consumption and investment. 2. Selling assets from its balance sheet, meaning the Fed is returning securities to the market that it had previously purchased, draining money from circulation. So what's the direct impact of this? It starts with financial assets. Stocks, bonds, real estate funds, and even property values had been rising for one simple reason. Money was cheap and abundant. When capital flows easily, investors take more risks, buy more, and prices go up. But when money becomes scarce, the opposite happens. Prices fall. And that's already begun. U.S. stock markets have seen sharp declines. The tech sector, in particular, is suffering major corrections. Investment funds are pulling back. And the real estate market, especially in the U.S., is beginning to show signs of fragility. What does this mean for you? If you invested under the assumption that assets always go up, it's time to rethink. The environment has changed. Ignoring that change is an expensive mistake. Moreover, many investors bought real estate, stocks, and other assets leveraged, meaning they used borrowed money. With higher interest rates and falling asset prices, these people now find themselves in a vulnerable position, paying high costs for something that's no longer worth what they paid, and possibly still depreciating. This effect is even more visible in the commercial real estate sector. Office buildings and corporate centers. With the rise of remote work, many of these spaces are sitting empty, and those who finance them counting on future profits now face defaults and declining property values. The cycle is clear. The era of easy money is over. And with it, disappears the illusion that markets are always stable. But beware, this doesn't mean it's time to run away from all investments. On the contrary, it means it's time to be strategic. This new phase demands a more selective approach to investing. It requires understanding that some assets will lose value, but others will thrive in this new environment. Productive assets, companies with strong cash flow and solid fundamentals, properties in strategic locations, and essential sectors like energy, food, and healthcare are more likely to hold up during monetary tightening. Also, maintaining liquidity, in other words, having access to capital when everyone else is panic selling, can become one of the biggest competitive advantages of your life. And this brings us back to a key principle of this video. Preparation is more powerful than prediction. You don't need to know exactly when the market will fall, but you do need to be ready when it does. The Federal Reserve's shift is just beginning, and it could last for years. The global slowdown will impact all economies, and for those who are unprepared, the damage will be severe. But for those who are informed, financially educated, and mentally prepared, this is a rare chance to reposition themselves in the game. In the next chapter, we'll explore how all of this is playing out in one of the most sensitive and impactful markets for everyday life, the real estate sector. We'll look at why commercial properties are collapsing, what opportunities are emerging, and how to protect or even profit from this new reality. The decline of the real estate market. For a long time, real estate was seen as one of the safest and most stable investments in the world. Buying property was synonymous with protection, passive income, and guaranteed appreciation. But that scenario has started to change, and quickly. In the United States and many other countries, the real estate sector is undergoing a profound transformation. What was once a solid asset has now become a field of uncertainty. And it all connects to the topics we've already discussed: inflation, rising interest rates, and most importantly, a shift in social and economic behavior. Let's start with commercial properties, office spaces, and corporate buildings. The pandemic accelerated something that was already happening on a smaller scale: the adoption of remote work. Millions of companies realized they could operate efficiently without relying on expensive physical office spaces. The result? Entire floors in major urban centers are now empty and have stayed that way. This prolonged vacancy created a double problem. On one hand, owners can't rent out these properties. On the other, their market value drops, directly affecting investors, real estate funds, and the banks that finance those buildings. And the problem doesn't stop there. With the interest rate hikes led by the Federal Reserve, real estate financing has become more expensive. That means buying property today requires higher monthly payments, less available credit, and a greater risk of default. Imagine the impact on middle-class families who bought homes at the peak of the market frenzy. Now, with heavier loan payments and properties that are no longer appreciating as before, these families find themselves trapped in mortgages they can no longer afford and unable to sell without taking a loss. On top of that, the rising cost of living, driven by inflation, is directly hurting people's ability to keep up with their mortgages. Rent, food, utilities, and fuel have gone up. In many cases, wages have not. This creates a domino effect. More defaults, more foreclosures, and, inevitably, more downward pressure on real estate prices. It's the perfect setup for a silent housing crisis. And once again, while most people see only problems, prepared investors see opportunities. Robert Kiyosaki, for example, is a big advocate for real estate investing, but with strategy. He doesn't buy property for status or emotional reasons. He buys assets that generate positive cash flow, even during a crisis. And here's the key. The property's value matters, but what matters more is the cash flow it can generate. Well-located properties with strong rental demand and acquired below market value are valuable assets, especially during broad market downturns. Another opportunity lies in repurposing commercial buildings. In several U.S. cities, office spaces are being converted into affordable housing or residences for vulnerable populations. Investors who spot this trend early can profit by reusing previously idle structures. But caution is essential. Not every property is a good deal. You must analyze location, demand, infrastructure, and future appreciation potential. And above all, avoid getting into leveraged deals without guaranteed cash flow. The time for buying hoping for appreciation is over. Another smart strategy is to watch mid-sized cities and suburban areas near major hubs. With the rise of remote work, many families are leaving large urban centers in search of better quality of life and lower costs. This could lead to unexpected appreciation in areas once overlooked by the market. Here's the most important point. The real estate market is changing, and those who stick with the old mindset will lose money. But those willing to study, analyze, and act wisely may find properties at reduced prices, creative financing options, and strong profit margins in the medium to long term. In the next chapter, we'll explore why financial education is the only tool capable of preparing you to navigate this shifting landscape, and how it can be the difference between drowning in debt or building an empire, even during a crisis. The solution: real financial education. So far, we've talked about inflation, the dollar crisis, the Federal Reserve's moves, and real estate market instability. It may all seem overwhelming, and it truly is. But there's one factor that can transform this entire scenario: financial education. Robert Kiyosaki often says that the true difference between those who win and those who lose in times of crisis isn't income, it's knowledge. And that statement holds a powerful truth. Most people aren't failing because they're not trying. They're failing because they're heading in the wrong direction. Traditional education teaches you to obey, memorize, and fit in. But it teaches you nothing about how to handle the money you earn. No one shows you how to protect your wealth from inflation, how to generate passive income, how to invest safely, how to use debt wisely, or how to spot opportunities in the middle of chaos. And that's why, in times of crisis, financial ignorance becomes fatal. Think about it. If you don't know how money works, how could you possibly protect it? If you don't understand how inflation erodes your purchasing power, how could you avoid it? If you've never learned how to invest, how could you grow your wealth? The truth is, most people learn how to work for money, but never learn how to make money work for them. And that's the #1 mistake. Let's take a simple example. Imagine two people earning the same salary. The first spends everything and saves the rest in a savings account, thinking they're being safe. The second invests part of their income in assets that generate returns: stocks, real estate, precious metals, a small business. 10 years later, who do you think will be in a better position? You don't even need to do the math. It's a matter of mindset. Financial education is not about getting rich overnight. It's about learning how to play the game by the right rules. It means understanding that idle money loses value, that debt can be an ally, that assets are better than liabilities, that diversification offers protection, and that time is the greatest ally of those who invest wisely. And the best part is, anyone can learn this. You don't need to be an economist. You don't need a Harvard degree. You just need the willingness to step out of voluntary ignorance and into the realm of strategic awareness. That means learning what inflation is and how it affects your purchasing power, understanding how compound interest can work for or against you, knowing the difference between assets and liabilities, understanding investment classes and their risks, learning how to calculate the return on a property before buying it, protecting your wealth with diversification and liquidity. These aren't luxuries, they're basic survival skills. In a world where the financial system is rapidly evolving, standing still means falling behind. And more importantly, financial education brings a powerful side effect: freedom. When you understand how money works, you stop fearing crises. You begin to see them as opportunities. You no longer rely on the government, a boss, or a steady job. You create your own income streams, your own growth plan, your own system. That's the core of Kiyosaki's philosophy, and of many other successful financial educators. They don't teach you how to make money. They teach you how to think about money. And that shift in thinking changes everything. The crisis we face today is, above all, a crisis of knowledge. Most people are still stuck in a 20th century mindset. Work, pay bills, save, wait for retirement. But the world has changed. The risks have changed. The opportunities have changed. The rules of the game have changed. Those who don't change with them stay vulnerable. But those who are willing to learn gain the power to transform their own reality. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into this mindset shift. We'll explore why thinking like an investor, not like a worker, is the next step on your journey toward financial freedom. And why this transition may be the turning point between becoming a victim of the crisis or coming out of it stronger than ever. Think like an investor, not like an employee. Financial education is the first step, but to truly change your life, you need to change your mindset. And that shift begins by understanding one fundamental difference. The way an employee thinks is completely different from how an investor acts. Most people are conditioned from childhood to follow a linear model: study hard, get good grades, land a stable job, work for 40 years, save money, pay bills, and wait for retirement. That's the safe path, the one most people consider normal. But normal doesn't mean effective. In fact, that model was designed to create stability for the system, not freedom for the individual. Robert Kiyosaki explains this clearly in his famous cash flow quadrant. There are 4 types of people in the financial world: employees, self-employed, business owners, and investors. The first 2 trade time for money. The last 2 build systems and make money work for them. And that's where the difference starts to make sense. An employee trades hours for a paycheck. The more they work, the more they earn. But time is limited, so there's a ceiling on their income. And if they lose their job, they lose everything. Meanwhile, the investor creates income streams that don't depend on their physical presence. They invest in assets that generate profit while they sleep. And most importantly, they build freedom. This doesn't mean having a job is wrong, but depending solely on it is. Because in times of crisis, like the one we're facing now, secure jobs vanish, salaries lose value, and the cost of living soars. Those who think like employees panic. Those who think like investors see opportunity. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine two people earning the same $5,000 monthly salary. The first spends it all: rent, car loan, credit card bills, installment shopping, living paycheck to paycheck. The second lives on $3,000 and invests the remaining $2,000. Over time, they begin earning dividends, rental income, and compound interest working in their favor. 10 years later, the first is still trapped by their paycheck. The second can live off passive income. That's the investor mindset. Sacrifice a little now to gain a lot later. Another fundamental trait of this mindset is the pursuit of assets. While the employee thinks about getting promoted or asking for a raise, the investor thinks about acquiring assets. They don't work to make their boss rich. They work, or invest, to make themselves rich. And the most interesting part is that this mindset can be adopted by anyone, at any income level. You can start small: a low-cost real estate fund, a low-risk investment, an online course on stocks, a side hustle with a small digital business. The key isn't how much you start with. It's developing the habit of thinking and acting like someone who builds assets, not just pays bills. Another thing that sets investors apart from employees is their relationship with risk. The average employee is terrified of losing money. That's why they cling to the safety of a fixed salary, even if it means staying stuck. But investors understand that calculated risk is part of growth. They don't gamble blindly. They study, analyze, simulate, and make decisions based on data. And they know that even when they lose, they learn and try again. Because the biggest risk is doing nothing. But perhaps the most transformational aspect of the investor's mindset is their focus on the long term. While the employee lives month to month, the investor thinks in decades. They're not just solving today's problems, they're building tomorrow's solutions. They want their money to grow, their investments to multiply, their freedom to expand. They're willing to wait. And in the meantime, they keep planting. This mindset shift can feel uncomfortable at first. It may seem counterintuitive. After all, we've been programmed to value immediate security, not future freedom. But the more you educate yourself, the more naturally this transition happens. You begin to see the world through different eyes, and you realize that you don't have to be a slave to the system. You can own your path. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper into building financial freedom by learning how to protect your money from inflation, not by saving it in a bank account, but by investing wisely in assets that preserve and grow in value, even during hard times. Protect your money from inflation. Now that you understand the importance of thinking like an investor instead of an employee, it's time to face one of your money's greatest enemies: inflation. Inflation is like a silent thief. It sneaks in quietly, acts slowly, and by the time you notice, your money has already lost value. It's the general rise in prices that erodes your purchasing power month after month, year after year. The problem is, while prices go up, your idle money stays exactly the same, which means it's worth less. Imagine you have $10,000 sitting in a checking account. If annual inflation is 10%, then in a year, that money will have the purchasing power of $9,000. In 5 years, it could be worth just over half of that. In other words, you're not saving, you're silently losing. And here's the hard truth. Keeping money in cash or in a savings account is the most guaranteed way to become quietly poorer. But the good news is, there are ways to protect yourself and even profit during times of high inflation. And it all starts with a shift in habit. Stop thinking about saving money. Start thinking about investing it. The question you should ask is not, where is my money safe? But rather, where can my money preserve or increase its real value? Here are some smart strategies for that. 1. Invest in real assets. Real assets have intrinsic value. They can be used, rented, or traded regardless of currency. Some examples: real estate, especially rental properties, or those in high-demand areas. Precious metals, like gold and silver, which have historically acted as stores of value. Productive businesses, investing in solid companies that generate consistent cash flow, even during crises. These assets often gain value precisely when money loses its purchasing power. 2. Strategically invest in variable income. Yes, stocks and ETFs fluctuate, but when chosen wisely, they preserve and grow value in the long term. Sectors like energy, healthcare, essential technology, and food tend to perform well during inflationary periods. Invest based on fundamentals, diversification, and a long-term view. Avoid hype. Focus on companies that generate profits and have pricing power. 3. Consider cryptocurrencies. With caution, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have shown potential as a hedge against fiat currency devaluation. However, they are highly volatile, require study, and should represent a small portion of your portfolio. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. 4. Stay away from traditional savings accounts. Savings accounts are among the most popular and also the most damaging investment vehicles during high inflation. Their returns don't keep up with rising prices, which means you lose purchasing power every month. Better options include inflation-indexed government bonds, inflation-linked CDBs, REITs, stocks, and investment funds. 5. Always diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spreading your money across different types of assets reduces risk and increases your chances of achieving real positive returns. Diversification is the foundation of financial protection. 6. Invest in yourself. Yes, you are an asset too. Learning new skills, developing additional sources of income, and expanding your financial knowledge is one of the most effective ways to protect yourself from inflation. Because the more you know, the less you rely on the system. The most important thing to understand is that money should never sit still. It should flow, produce, and grow. If it's standing still, it's dying. And inflation is the invisible poison accelerating that process. Protecting yourself from inflation is no longer optional. It's a matter of financial survival. In the next chapter, we'll expand on this idea and show how debt, often seen as the villain, can actually be one of the most powerful tools for building wealth. But only if it's used with intelligence and strategy. Ready to break that myth? Good debt, the tool of the rich. When you hear the word debt, what comes to mind? Fear? Stress? Interest? Danger? For most people, debt is synonymous with trouble. It's something to avoid at all costs. But for the wealthy and experienced investor, debt is a powerful and often essential tool for building wealth. The key is understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is the kind that takes money out of your pocket. It's when you finance a depreciating car, use your credit card for unnecessary purchases, or take out loans to cover day-to-day expenses. This type of debt enslaves you. It consumes your future in exchange for immediate comfort. Good debt, on the other hand, does the opposite. It puts money into your pocket. It's when you use other people's money, from banks, institutions, or investors, to acquire assets that generate income, appreciation, or savings. It acts as leverage. It amplifies your gains. And when used wisely, it can fast-track your journey to financial freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is one of the biggest advocates of this concept. He built his wealth by using good debt as a foundation, buying properties with financing, renovating them, renting them out, and refinancing to buy even more. The cash flow from rentals covered the loan payments, and there was still profit left over. His net worth grew and his taxes decreased. But pay attention. Not every debt becomes good just because you bought something that looks like an asset. The secret lies in cash flow. A financed property that doesn't generate income is a liability. A business bought with borrowed money that doesn't turn a profit is a money pit. An investment made with borrowed funds without a strategy is a huge risk. So, the first rule of good debt is this: it must pay for itself and still leave you a profit. In other words, the asset purchased with debt must generate monthly income greater than the cost of the debt itself. If it doesn't, you're just piling on risk and financial strain. Let's look at an example. Imagine you buy an apartment for $200,000, financing $180,000. Your monthly loan payment is $1,200. You renovate the property and rent it out for $1,800 with monthly expenses of $300 for condo fees and property taxes. The result? Net income of $300 per month from an asset you barely paid for out of your own pocket. Over time, the property appreciates, the rent increases, you deduct interest from your income taxes, and you can even refinance the asset to buy another. That's how the wealth-building wheel spins for those who use debt strategically. There's another important factor few people consider. Inflation can also work in your favor. If you lock in a long-term debt at a fixed interest rate and inflation rises, the real value of what you owe decreases. In other words, you're paying the bank back with cheaper money in the future. This effect is devastating for lenders, but a huge advantage for smart borrowers. Of course, this requires planning, control, and above all, financial education. Poorly used debt is like a sharp knife. It can be an incredible tool, or it can seriously injure you. So here are a few principles to use debt like the wealthy do. 1. Never take on debt to buy liabilities. If something doesn't generate income or value, like a new smartphone, a vacation, or a luxury car, it's not worth going into debt for. If you can't pay cash, you probably shouldn't buy it yet. 2. Do the math before signing anything. Compare rates, terms, cash flow, and expected returns. Run worst-case scenarios. Assess the risk. Debt is only good if you know exactly what you're doing. 3. Prefer debts backed by assets and lower interest rates. Financing tied to real estate, productive businesses, or investments usually offers lower rates than personal loans or credit cards. 4. Use debt to accelerate growth, not to survive. The ideal debt is one you take to scale an asset that's already producing results, or that you're highly confident will start producing soon. 5. Be disciplined with profits. When cash flow starts to appear, don't splurge. Reinvest, multiply, grow. The investor's game is about long-term building, not instant gratification. The truth is, the wealthy don't avoid debt. They control it. They use the system to their advantage. While most people fear credit, they educate themselves to master it. And once again, this reinforces what we've already said. What separates the rich from the poor isn't how much they earn. It's what they know and how they use that knowledge. In the next chapter, we'll take this idea even further, showing how having only one source of income is dangerous, and how creating multiple streams of income can be your greatest protection against any crisis. Create alternative income streams. If there's one mistake most people make, it's relying on a single source of income. Whether it's a steady job, a contract, or even your own business, putting all your eggs in one basket is a fragile strategy, especially in times of crisis. We live in a world where everything can change overnight. A budget cut, an unexpected layoff, a pandemic, a new technology, and suddenly, that safe source of income simply vanishes. Then comes the question, what do you do when the paycheck stops? For those who think like investors and who already understand the value of financial education and strategic debt, the answer lies in income diversification, or, as Robert Kiyosaki teaches, The rich have multiple streams of income. They never depend on just one check to maintain their lifestyle. They build a network of income sources that complement and protect one another. And the best part? You don't have to be a millionaire to start. With creativity, strategy, and action, anyone can build new income streams, even starting from zero. Let's explore a few of them. 1. Income from financial assets. You can generate income through dividend-paying stocks, real estate investment trusts, REITs, or fixed income investments that pay monthly interest. These are passive income sources that, once in place, continue to produce income even when you're not actively working. Example: a REIT that pays $20 per share per month. With 500 shares, that's $10,000 per year, without selling the asset. 2. Online businesses and digital products. It's never been easier to start a business from the comfort of your home. You can create and sell an online course, produce ebooks, templates, or spreadsheets, launch an online store, start dropshipping or affiliate marketing with digital products, monetize a YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok channel. These sources have huge scaling potential. A product can be sold an unlimited number of times without increasing your costs. The work is in the creation. The income comes after. 3. Income from rentals and real estate. Even with recent market shifts, rental income remains a stable revenue source, and it doesn't have to be a whole apartment. You can rent out a room on Airbnb, convert a garage into a storage unit, rent to students or short-term professionals. With creativity and good management, even small spaces can generate income. 4. Freelancing and service-based work. If you have a skill, writing, translating, coding, video editing, marketing, you can sell your time per project. Platforms like Upwork, Freelancer, and Fiverr connect professionals with clients from around the world. Tip: start with lower ticket services, build your reputation, and gradually raise your prices. 5. Consulting and mentoring. Do you have experience in something? Can you teach it to others? If yes, you can charge by the hour to help people or businesses solve specific problems. Consultants don't sell their time. They sell applied knowledge with results. 6. Shared economy income. You can make money with what you already have. Rent out your car via apps like Turo or GetAround, lend tools, cameras, or equipment. Share spaces for small events. These income streams don't require building a business, just a smart use of existing assets. 7. Royalties and licensing. If you create something, music, a book, a photo, a design, you can license it for use and earn royalties. It's a more technical, long-term model, but with incredible potential. Think songs that generate income for decades, books that sell for generations, or photos used in thousands of websites and campaigns. 8. Community or membership creation. If you have a niche audience, you can turn followers into subscribers. Platforms like Hotmart, Sparkle, Substack, and Patreon let you charge monthly for exclusive content, special perks, or direct access to you. And why does all this matter? Because stability no longer lies in a job. It lies in diversification. When you have 5, 6, or 7 income streams, even if one disappears, the others hold you up. You sleep better, you make clearer decisions, and you build true freedom. And when well managed, these income streams can become passive income. At first, you work for them. Later, they work for you. And here's the most liberating truth of all. You don't need to earn more to have more. You need to earn smarter. Smarter in structure, in quality, in strategy, in intelligence. If you start building these income streams now, even slowly, in a few years, you could be reaping results that will completely transform your life. In the next chapter, we'll explore why the economic future still holds extreme scenarios and how you can prepare for any of them. even if you don't know which one will actually happen. 3 scenarios for the economic future. You already understand why you should think like an investor, diversify your income, and protect your money. But now comes an even more important question. What's really coming next? The future of the global economy is uncertain, and it will be shaped by many factors beyond our control. Politics, geopolitics, central bank decisions, and technological and social changes. However, based on current trends and the analysis of experts like Robert Kiyosaki and Richard Duncan, we can identify 3 main scenarios that could unfold in the coming years. None of them are guaranteed, but all are plausible. And the more prepared you are for any of them, the more protected and potentially profitable you'll be. Let's break down each scenario. Scenario 1. Deep recession with mass unemployment. This is perhaps the most likely in the short term. After years of monetary expansion and fiscal stimulus, central banks are now switching gears, raising interest rates and cutting liquidity to combat inflation. This is already impacting consumer spending, investment, and business confidence. If this trend continues, we may enter a period of global recession, meaning a prolonged decline in economic activity. In practice, this could mean mass layoffs. Companies cut costs, freeze hiring, and lay off employees. Stock market drops. Equities and REITs could crash, destroying the wealth of those who invested without a strategy. Reduced credit availability. Financing becomes harder and more expensive to access. Turn to your shrinking consumption. People spend less, reducing company revenues, leading to further cuts and a downward spiral. For those who rely on a fixed salary or a single income stream, this is troubling. But for those who are prepared, this could be the greatest buying opportunity of the decade. Properties, stocks, and valuable businesses may be acquired at deep discounts if you have liquidity, long-term vision, and nerves of steel. Scenario 2. Hyperinflation and collapse of purchasing power. If governments fail to control debt levels and continue printing money at scale, we could enter a period of hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is one of the most destructive economic phenomena. It's when currency value plummets so rapidly that money literally loses value overnight. It's happened before. In 1920s Germany, in Venezuela during the 2010s, in Argentina repeatedly. And yes, it could happen again. Even in so-called stable countries, the effects would be devastating. Salaries lose value within weeks. Prices skyrocket out of control. Cash savings become worthless. Trust in the currency vanishes. At the same time, real assets tend to retain, or even multiply, their value. Those who own rental properties, gold and silver reserves, profitable businesses with flexible pricing, income in strong currencies or well-chosen digital assets can survive and even thrive. Hyperinflation is the collapse of paper money, not real value. In this scenario, the worst thing you can do is sit on cash. The best defense is holding tangible, internationalized, or productive assets. Scenario 3. Collapse of the global monetary system and the end of dollar dominance. This scenario is slower, but with radical consequences. The weakening of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Today, over 60% of international transactions are conducted in dollars. But that dominance is under threat. Countries like China, Russia, India, and even Saudi Arabia are entering bilateral trade agreements to ditch the dollar. They're stockpiling gold, launching sovereign digital currencies, accelerating de-dollarization. If the dollar loses its reserve status, the US will no longer be able to fund deficits by printing money, potentially triggering an unprecedented crisis in the world's largest economy. And the impact would be global. Dollar reserves would collapse in value. The cost of imported goods would spike. Global trade could temporarily break down. A new currency, digital or asset-backed, could emerge as the standard. In this scenario, assets backed by real-world value and global financial knowledge become essential. Those stuck in the old model of work, save, retire will be crushed by the speed of this transition. How can you prepare for any of these scenarios? The truth is, no one knows exactly which of these scenarios will happen. Maybe even more than one at the same time. That's why the smartest move is to prepare in an anti-fragile way. Here are 5 principles to do that. 1. Diversify your exposure. Hold assets across different sectors, currencies, and markets. Include gold, stocks, real estate, and even a small allocation to cryptocurrencies. This shields you from concentrated risks. 2. Build liquidity. Keep an emergency reserve, preferably in a strong currency or easily accessible. Crises create opportunities, but only those with liquidity can take advantage of them. 3. Reduce dependence on traditional systems. If everything you own is tied to banks or legacy financial institutions, you're exposed. Consider keeping part of your capital in personal safes, wallets, or physical assets. 4. Build income autonomy. The more independent income streams you have, the more freedom you gain. Don't rely on a single client, employer, or sales channel. 5. Keep learning. The economy evolves. The financial system changes. The rules shift. If you don't keep up, you become vulnerable. Knowledge is your best protection. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how to turn crises into real opportunities, how the world's smartest investors profit precisely when panic grips the market, how to profit amid the chaos. Financial crises, economic collapses, and periods of instability cause fear, anxiety, and paralysis for most people. And it's understandable. When everything seems to be falling apart, markets crashing, companies shutting down, inflation skyrocketing, the natural reaction is to protect oneself, hide, and wait it out. But there's a small group of people who see it differently. While most run away, this group moves forward. While many panic and sell, they buy. While others lament, they position themselves. They are the prepared investors, those who understand that chaos is the best soil for planting wealth. This mindset isn't the result of luck or emotional coldness. It's the result of education, preparation, and strategy. They know economic cycles are natural. They know every market has ups and downs. And most importantly, they know that the most valuable assets are sold at deep discounts precisely when fear dominates. And history proves it. During the 2008 crisis, stocks of solid companies like Apple, Amazon, and Google dropped by up to 50%. Those who bought back then multiplied their capital in the following years. The same happened during the 2020 pandemic crash. And the pattern always repeats. Those who stay calm and know what they're doing capitalize on the discounts that fear creates. But how do you apply this in practice? Here are the fundamental principles for profiting during a crisis, whatever it may be. 1. Have liquidity when everyone else is selling. The first rule to capitalize on chaos is simple. Have cash when nobody else does. This means you must keep part of your capital liquid and accessible, whether in strong currencies, highly liquid funds, or quickly sellable assets. This reserve allows you to buy great assets at low prices, real estate, stocks, businesses, when everyone else is desperate to sell. Remember, profit is made at the time of purchase, and the best purchases happen when everyone else is afraid. 2. Buy undervalued assets. During crises, many high-quality assets are sold at prices far below their real value, simply because people need liquidity or are panicking. Your job is to spot these opportunities. It requires study and patience, but those who develop this skill can buy solid companies, well-located real estate, and even entire businesses at 30%, 50%, or even 70% discounts. Time rewards those with long-term vision. Invest in recession-proof sectors. Some sectors are more resilient during tough times. They offer products or services people continue to use, no matter the economic situation. These include food and agriculture, healthcare and pharmaceuticals, energy, electric, oil, gas, education and upskilling, essential technology, security and protection. Investing in companies or assets tied to these sectors can not only protect your wealth, but also generate profits while other industries collapse. 4. Negotiate with power. During crises, everything becomes negotiable. Property owners accept lower offers. Suppliers ease terms. Investors are willing to split profits for capital. Negotiation power shifts to those with resources and vision. Be ready to negotiate, make offers, form partnerships. Great fortunes are often made at the negotiating table, especially when the other side is under pressure. 5. Don't get infected by mass fear. One of the biggest mistakes small investors make is making decisions based on emotion, especially fear. They see markets falling and think, "I have to sell everything." They hear bad news and conclude, "It's time to hide." But great investors do the opposite. They follow fundamentals. They analyze numbers. They focus on value. They make decisions based on logic, not panic. If you want to profit in tough times, you need to develop strategic calmness. 6. Create value while others retreat. During recessions, many companies cut back on innovation, marketing, and new projects. This creates a vacuum, an opportunity for those willing to keep delivering value. You can launch a new product with less competition, buy and restructure a struggling business, create content, build a brand, or grow a community, while others remain silent. Crises are moments when the spotlight is dim, but those who light their own shine brighter. 7. Build strategic relationship. In good times, everyone wants to network. In hard times, only the committed stay connected. Use the moment to strengthen your network, join strategic groups, and get closer to mentors. Relationships built during crises are deeper and more profitable. 8. Take advantage of real estate repricing. As we've discussed, real estate can be heavily impacted by crises, but it's also one of the best long-term wealth builders. If you have access to credit or capital, you can buy properties at deep discounts, adapt them for new demands, like smaller rentals, co-working spaces, or affordable housing, and turn them into cash-flowing assets. This is one of Kiyosaki's favorite strategy, and one of the most accessible for beginners. The central point is this: crises don't eliminate value. They just change the price. And if you're prepared, educated, and mentally ready, you'll turn every fall into a stepping stone. You'll buy when others sell. You'll build while others retreat. You'll prosper, while many merely survive. In the next chapter, we'll discuss which sectors, businesses, and investments are likely to grow during times of crisis, so you know where to focus your attention and energy. Businesses that grow during a crisis. While many sectors shrink during a crisis, some business models grow and grow fast. These are activities tied to basic needs, support services, affordable solutions, or opportunities for reinvention. Identifying these sectors and knowing how to position yourself within them could be the difference between surviving or thriving during an economic collapse. In times of recession, priorities shift, consumer behavior adjusts, and what once seemed non-essential gives way to necessities. In this scenario, businesses that endure, adapt, and even expand emerge, often at surprising speed. Here are the key sectors that stand out, and why. 1. Food and essentials. Regardless of the economy, people need to eat. They need water, hygiene products, and daily necessities. That's why supermarkets, small stores, agriculture, distributors, and food suppliers maintain steady demand even during tough times. Additionally, the demand for cheaper, more affordable products rises. Those who offer quality at fair prices attract consumers looking to save money. 2. Health and wellness. Economic crises often trigger emotional and physical crises. Stress, anxiety, and health problems linked to financial pressure rise. This fuels demand for affordable clinics, mental health services, psychologists, therapists, coaches, pharmacies, and natural health products, accessible fitness options, online personal trainers, low-cost gyms, workout apps. Even when consumers cut luxury spending, health remains a top priority. 3. Education and professional development. During uncertain times, people seek ways to increase employability or even change careers. Short courses, mentorships, technical training, practical specializations, and financial education programs see a surge in demand. And the best part, with online models, these products can scale easily and be sold at low costs with high profit margins. Examples: courses in Excel, digital marketing, programming, copywriting, language classes, entrepreneurship or career reinvention mentorships, content focused on debt management, investing, and financial organization. 4. Technology and digital solutions. Technology becomes even more essential during crises, especially for optimizing operations, reducing costs, and reaching new customers. Startups offering automation tools, organization platforms, financial management apps, digital marketing services, and e-commerce solutions tend to attract businesses trying to do more with less. Additionally, general consumers consume more online content, use more apps, and look for affordable alternatives for entertainment, education, and productivity. If you work in development, design, video editing, content creation, or digital consulting, your demand tends to grow. 5. Second-hand, repair, and reuse businesses. With tighter budgets, consumers look for ways to save money, favoring circular economy models. Some examples: thrift stores, physical or digital, selling used furniture and electronics, repair shops for appliances, clothing, and smartphones, tool, car, or equipment rental services. These businesses often have low startup costs, are highly resilient, and can grow quickly in communities hit hardest by economic downturns. 6. Financial services and planning. Amid chaos, many people realize, often too late, that they lack financial knowledge. This opens up space for financial educators, planners, consultants, and creators focused on personal finance and investment. This market also includes personal and business financial management software, expense tracking platforms, investment apps. Those who offer clarity amid the collapse become valuable and well-compensated resources. 7. Physical and digital security. Economic downturns often come with a rise in crime, fraud, and scams. Thus, physical and cyber protection solutions become even more important. Promising areas include home and business monitoring services, security system installation, digital security consulting, encryption, privacy protection, sales of safes, smart locks, antivirus software, etc. Security never goes out of style, and during crises, it becomes even more critical. The secret is to understand that you don't need to invent something new. You need to find a real pain point and deliver a better, faster, or cheaper solution than existing alternatives. Those who can do that, even with a lean structure and a focus on solving urgent problems, will grow. In the next chapter, we'll apply this logic directly to the real estate market and show you how to spot valuable opportunities even amid instability. 9. Strategies for the real estate market. During a crisis. When we talk about crises, real estate is often among the first sectors to feel the impact. Financing becomes more expensive, demand for purchases falls, commercial properties face high vacancy rates, and many owners are forced to sell at below-market prices. But it's precisely in this environment that some of the best opportunities emerge for those who are prepared. Robert Kiyosaki, who built much of his fortune through real estate, says, "The best bargains show up when everyone is scared." And he's right. While most panic, smart investors buy real assets at deep discounts and position themselves for gains in the next cycle. Let's understand how this works in practice and how you can apply this strategy even with limited resources. 1. Focus on cash-flowing properties, not just appreciation. One of the biggest mistakes new investors make is buying properties hoping only for appreciation. This works in a booming market, but is not safe during periods of instability. The best strategy is to focus on properties that generate positive cash flow from day one. That means the rental income must cover all expenses, mortgage, taxes, maintenance, and still leave profit. If the property doesn't pay for itself, it's a disguised liability. 2. Prioritize strategic locations. During crises, people seek more affordable, well-located options. Properties near public transport, shopping centers, hospitals, and schools maintain demand even when the market contracts. Additionally, growing suburban areas or mid-sized cities receiving urban migration due to lower costs can offer excellent rental or resale opportunities. 3. Take advantage of price drops and motivated sellers. Crises create motivated sellers, people who can't afford their mortgages, indebted investors, or companies offloading assets. This creates an ideal environment to negotiate better payment terms, buy below appraisal value, request discounts for cash offers, exchange debt for cash-flowing assets. If you have liquidity or know how to structure a smart proposal, you can acquire great properties at 20%, 30%, even 50% real discounts. 4. Consider conversions and repurposing. The market has changed. Properties once suited for one purpose can now be repurposed. Examples: vacant offices turned into compact apartments or co-working spaces, large homes converted into shared living spaces, properties in tourist areas adapted for short-term rentals. Adapting use allows you to meet new demand and extract more value from so-called stuck assets. 5. Use leverage wisely. As we discussed in the debt chapter, financing can be a powerful tool if used wisely. During crises, banks and institutions may offer special terms to stimulate the market. Watch for fixed-rate mortgage lines, loans with grace periods, partnerships with developers, opportunities to use government savings accounts, like FGTS, for down payments. But remember, only finance if the property generates more than it costs. Otherwise, you're taking on debt without returns. 6. Focus on entry-level properties and quick rentals. Cheaper, easily accessible, ready-to-move-in properties tend to have higher liquidity even in tough times. Ideal options include 1-2-bedroom units, well-located, with low condo fees and fast rental potential. Serving students, single professionals, small families, people migrating for necessity. You can rent out quickly and maintain strong cash flow. 7. Don't buy with emotion, buy with calculation. The real estate market is full of emotional traps, beautiful facades, promises of appreciation, unmissable opportunities. Forget all that. During a crisis, you must act like a business person. Focus on the numbers, not appearances. Calculate the return on investment, ROI, rental payback, renovation costs, and expected vacancy rates. If the numbers work, go ahead. If they don't, no matter how promising the property seems, walk away. Real estate crises create victims, but they also create millionaires. The difference lies in education, composure, and preparation. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the power of financial networking and why, in tough times, being surrounded by the right people can be more valuable than money itself. The power of networking and strategic alliances. You've probably heard the phrase, Your network is your net worth. In times of stability, it sounds like good advice. But during a crisis, it becomes a survival law. When the system shakes, when banks pull back, when customers vanish and resources dry up, it's not your titles that save you. It's your people. And not just any people. Those who think like you, who have weathered storms, who have vision and courage. Experienced investors know that relationships are worth more than capital. Many of the greatest opportunities, whether in real estate deals, partnerships, investments, or insider information, don't show up on websites or storefronts. They appear in backroom conversations. But to access those conversations, you need to be in the right circles. 1. Surround yourself with growth-minded people. During crises, pessimism spreads like a virus. Complaints, fear, paralysis. That's why you must deliberately seek out those who see solutions while others see problems. Look for investor groups, entrepreneur communities, mentors with real-world experience, people who have survived previous collapses, channels and forums offering practical, updated content. These connections offer more than advice. They offer access. Access to opportunities, partnerships, warnings, and shortcuts. 2. Build your reputation before you need help. Networking isn't just about asking for favors. It's about building presence, authority, and reciprocity. It's about demonstrating value, earning trust, and helping others before you need anything. Attend events, comment on relevant posts, share your learnings, help solve someone's problem, connect people, build bridges. This way, when an opportunity arises, you'll be remembered. And when you need support, it will come naturally. 3. Seek complementary alliances. Strategic partnerships can help you grow even when the market shrinks. Examples: you have capital. Your partner has technical knowledge. You have access to cheap properties. Another has credit to finance them. You excel in sales. Another excels in delivery. You master digital marketing. Another has a customer base. Joining forces with complementary partners accelerates results and reduces risks. But choose wisely. Align values, expectations, and formalize everything clearly. Great businesses start with trust and survive with well-defined agreements. 4. Stay visible and active. Crises isolate people. Many go silent, disappear from networks, go into standby mode. But leaders, the bold ones, stay visible. During uncertainty, publish more, speak more, connect more. Show that you're active, analyzing, learning, investing. This attracts opportunities and like-minded people. Remember, the right information at the right time can change your life. And most of the time, it doesn't come from the news. It comes from someone you know. In the next chapter, we'll talk about how to develop high-demand skills that keep you relevant, needed, and well-paid, even when the world outside is collapsing. Develop skills that will always be valuable. You can lose money, properties, investments. You can lose a job, a contract, an entire business. But there's something no one can ever take from you: the skills you develop. In times of crisis, the market shifts, companies cut costs, competition increases, and only those with truly valuable skills can maintain their income, their relevance, and often multiply their opportunities. Robert Kiyosaki says, "The greatest asset is not money, it's your mind." And he's right. What you know and how you think determines your value in the market. And more, it determines your ability to reinvent yourself when everything around you falls apart. That's why in this chapter, you'll discover the skills that never go out of style and that actually become more valuable when the world is in crisis. 1. Financial skills. If you don't know how to manage your money, invest, assess risks, or protect your assets, you'll always be vulnerable, even if you earn well. Developing financial intelligence is the foundation of everything. It includes personal and family budgeting, cash flow management, investment analysis and evaluation, opportunity assessment, knowledge of taxes, inflation, interest rates. These are the first skills you must master to survive any crisis. 2. Sales and negotiation. No matter what happens in the economy, there will always be demand for good salespeople and negotiators. Whether you're selling a product, a service, an idea, or yourself in a job interview, being able to persuade, listen, argue, and close deals puts you ahead of 90% of people. And even better, this is a highly transferable skill. It applies in any industry, any country, any context. 3. Digital marketing and online positioning. The world is digital, and during crises, businesses, freelancers, and brands need to sell more with less. This means digital marketing becomes essential, and those who master it have steady clients and jobs. You can learn paid traffic, Google Ads, Facebook ads, copywriting, persuasive writing, social media management and content creation, SEO, search engine optimization, email marketing and sales funnels. You can apply this knowledge for clients or to build your own online income. 4. Digital and technological skills. Crises accelerate digitalization. Companies cut staff and adopt automation. Entire sectors move online. Tools once optional become mandatory. Learning to use and apply tools like advanced Excel and dashboards, Notion, Trello, ClickUp, task and team management, automation platforms, Zapier, Make, artificial intelligence and data analysis, WordPress, Shopify, e-commerce platforms makes you more productive, more valuable, and harder to replace. 5. Communication and influence. Speaking well. Presenting ideas clearly. Building genuine connections. These will never go out of style. Whether in a job, content creation, team leadership, or contract negotiation, how you communicate determines your authority. You can develop this by reading aloud, participating in public speaking groups, studying storytelling techniques, producing videos, articles, or podcasts. The better you master communication, the more doors will open. 6. Problem solving and strategic thinking. During crises, problems are everywhere, but there's something rare: people who solve them. Companies and leaders seek professionals and partners who can bring solutions, analyze scenarios, propose plans, and execute with focus. This is worth more than a fancy resume. Learn to approach challenges logically. Break big problems into steps. Act strategically, not impulsively. 7. Interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence. In a stressed, anxious, and competitive world, those who can manage relationships thrive. Working in teams, leading, listening, influencing without force, being diplomatic and empathetic, these traits set you apart even when technical skills are equal. This is also a key to leading through crises. People follow leaders who show control, vision, and humanity, not panic. What do all these skills have in common? They don't require formal degrees. They're accessible through study, practice, and consistency. They can be monetized in multiple ways. They're useful in any crisis. Start by choosing 1 or 2 skills to develop right now. Take online courses. Practice daily. Use your personal projects as a lab. In a short time, you'll become more valued, more needed, and more free. In the next chapter, we'll discuss why you must question the traditional education and work system and how to build your financial freedom outside the old formulas. Question the traditional system. All your life, you've probably heard the same formula. Study hard, get good grades, find a good job, work hard for 40 years, save a little, and retire safely. That's the dominant narrative, the safe path. But looking at the world around us, it's impossible not to wonder, does this system still work? The answer is clear: not anymore. This model was built in the last century, during a time of stability, lifelong jobs, guaranteed pensions, and predictable economic growth. But the game has changed, and the system has not updated. Today, we see degree holders without jobs, workers unable to afford their own homes, retirements that don't cover basic living costs, young people in debt before they even enter the workforce, professionals trained in fields that no longer exist. Meanwhile, the cost of living keeps rising. Inflation destroys purchasing power, and the financial rules are being rewritten in real time. Yet millions continue following the same outdated script because they were never taught to question it. And that's exactly what you need to start doing. Question everything. 1. Why doesn't school teach you about money? You learn complex equations, historical dates, grammar rules, but you never learn how a credit card really works, how to invest your money, how to protect your assets, how to get out of debt, how to create passive income. This is no accident. The system wasn't designed to make you free, but to keep you dependent. Financial ignorance is the invisible leash that holds most people captive. 2. Why do we keep trading time for money? School trains you to be a good employee, to obey, follow orders, clock in, and produce for someone else. It doesn't teach you to create businesses, to negotiate, to build assets, to think independently. Meanwhile, the system's owners accumulate wealth and freedom, not because they work harder, but because they understand the real rules of the game. 3. Why do we accept the work until you die model? The idea of working your entire life for a modest retirement is a trap. Yet thousands keep playing this broken game. But there is another way, the path of financial education, asset building, and intentional freedom. And it all starts when you decide to stop blindly accepting what you've been told. Here's the hard but liberating truth. If you do what everyone else does, you'll get what everyone else gets. And most people are stressed, in debt, and hopeless. The good news? You don't have to follow that script. You can learn to think like an owner, to create your own systems, to build wealth instead of merely surviving, to see money as a tool, not a goal, to choose freedom over the illusion of stability. In the next chapter, we'll talk about why tangible assets, like real estate, gold, and energy, are the preferred weapons of experienced investors for protecting and multiplying wealth in any scenario. Tangible assets, crisis shields. When everything around you feels unstable, currency, government, markets, employment, there's one form of protection that has proven effective for centuries: tangible assets. While stocks crash, currencies devalue, and banks freeze withdrawals, real assets remain, existing, providing value, and serving practical purposes. That's why, during crises, serious investors don't rush to cash. They rush to assets you can touch, use, rent, or sell. Let's understand why these assets are considered shields and how you can use them to your advantage. 1. Real estate. Real estate is one of the oldest forms of wealth protection. Even with market fluctuations, a well-located property never completely loses its utility. It can be rented out, generating cash flow, used as housing or business space, exchanged in trades or refinancing, appreciated through renovations, rezoning, or urban growth. Moreover, real estate offers tax benefits, is accepted as collateral, and holds up well over time. In times of inflation, rents tend to rise, protecting your real returns. 2. Gold and precious metals. Historically, gold has always been the ultimate currency. When empires fell, currencies collapsed, or banks closed, gold remained accepted worldwide. During hyperinflation, wars, or currency collapse, gold retains intrinsic value, is portable and easily tradable, acts as a portable store of wealth, is accepted globally. Plus, gold doesn't rely on governments, banks, or technology. It is a literal physical hedge against financial collapse. 3. Oil and energy. This might seem distant for small investors, but the principle remains. Energy drives the world. Investing directly or indirectly in energy sources like oil, natural gas, solar, hydroelectric, means positioning yourself in something that will always have demand. Energy companies tend to be resilient, dividend-paying, and backed by long-term contracts. Even during crises, people still need light, transportation, heating, and internet. 4. Land and agricultural assets. Food production never stops. Fertile land, well located with water access and productive use potential, is a scarce and valuable asset. Investing in land is no longer just for the ultra-wealthy. Today, you have options like investment groups, agricultural investment funds, cooperative shares, leasing land to farmers. The global demand for food keeps rising. Those who control production control real value. 5. Own businesses with physical assets. Owning a business based on tangible goods, machinery, equipment, physical inventory, vehicles, can also be a powerful form of protection, as long as it generates cash flow and aligns with essential sectors. Remember, a tangible asset is not just something you can touch. It's something with real value, utility, and income potential. Why does this matter so much? Because when the system breaks, papers lose value. Bank statements become illusions. Safe funds get frozen. Cryptocurrencies glitch. But tangible assets remain. They represent autonomy, stability, security, bargaining power, freedom. And the more uncertain the future, the more valuable it will be to own assets you can use, enjoy, or trade, without needing permission from anyone. In the next chapter, we'll apply these principles and show you how to prepare to take advantage of market crashes, buying undervalued assets when everyone else is panicking. Prepare to seize the downturns. When the market crashes, most people panic. But the smartest investors see these moments as the opportunity of a lifetime. They know that great fortunes are not made during times of prosperity. They are made during crises. And it's no coincidence. Crashes expose excesses, cleanse the market, and reprice assets at a discount. Good companies fall alongside bad ones. Valuable properties lose value, just like overhyped ones. Fear levels everything. And those who have liquidity, vision, and courage buy while everyone else sells. But to do this safely and effectively, you need preparation. Buying just because something is cheap can be as dangerous as buying at the top. The secret is knowing what to look for and how to act. 1. Have a plan before the crisis. Hits. You don't build a shelter during the storm. You need to know which assets you want to buy, at what price, with what margin of safety, and how much you're willing to invest before the downturn starts. Use stable periods to study, create target asset lists, understand fundamentals, and structure entry strategies. 2. Build an opportunity fund. This is different from an emergency fund. Here, we're talking about money set aside exclusively to seize great buying opportunities. This liquidity can be kept in high-liquidity fixed-income investments, strong currencies like dollars or euros, cash reserve funds or treasury bonds, a portion in stablecoins for those operating in crypto. Having quick access to capital when everything is undervalued is one of the greatest competitive advantages of a prepared investor. 3. Take advantage of herd behavior. In reverse, most people's behavior is predictable. Buy high, sell low. Driven by euphoria or fear, the average investor makes emotional decisions. You must do the opposite. Buy when everyone else is afraid. Sell when everyone else is greedy. But this requires emotional control. And emotional control comes only through education, self-awareness, and practice. 4. Look for undervalued assets with strong fundamentals. Not everything that drops in price is a good opportunity. Some companies fall because they're poorly managed, Properties drop because the location lost value. Funds fall because the entire sector declined. You must look for solid companies with good management and strong cash positions, properties with strong locations and steady demand, resilient funds with consistent return history, businesses with quick recovery potential. The goal is to find assets that are temporarily cheap, but structurally valuable. 5. Invest based on cycles, not moments. Great investors think in decades, not months. They know the market is cyclical. After the crash comes recovery, and real value always reemerges. Therefore, don't try to catch the absolute bottom. Start buying gradually, with regular contributions. This reduces risk and improves your average entry price. This technique is known as dollar cost averaging, DCA, and it works extremely well during volatile times. 6. Act with discipline, not urgency. When everything is falling, the temptation to make a big bet is strong. But a disciplined investor knows how to wait. They stick to the plan, respect limits, and invest calmly. Because they understand that the game is long-term, and haste is the enemy of strategy. Taking advantage of downturns isn't about luck. It's about being ready. It's about having knowledge, liquidity, and courage. And if you prepare well, the next collapse won't be a tragedy. It could be the beginning of your greatest financial growth. In the next chapter, we'll tie everything together and show why financial education is, ultimately, the most powerful weapon you can carry. In any scenario, financial education as a tool for transformation. If there's one element that connects every chapter of this video, from the global economic crisis to strategies for creating multiple income streams, it's this: financial education. We're not just talking about understanding spreadsheet or knowing what the interest rate is. We're talking about a complete shift in mindset, behavior, and decision-making. An education that lets you see the real money game and play by the real rules. Because ultimately, the question isn't whether there will be a crisis. The question is, when it comes, will you be a victim or a strategist? And the answer depends entirely on how much you've learned and applied. 1. Financial education is not about how much you earn. It's about what you do with what you have. Thousands of people with high salaries remain broke, stressed, and trapped. Meanwhile, others with modest incomes live peacefully with assets and options. The difference lies in knowledge and conscious money management. Those who understand financial education spend intelligently, protect themselves from inflation, strategically multiply income, invest with long-term vision, use debt as a tool, not a trap. 2. Financial education is freedom. Freedom from having to accept any job out of desperation, depending on governments or banks to fix your life, living in fear at the end of each month, panicking at every crisis or negative headline. When you learn about money, you gain control, you gain choices, you gain time, you gain peace, and more. You become an example. You inspire your family. You teach your children. You break cycles of scarcity that have lasted generations. 3. Financial education is accessible, but not easy. The good news is that today, there's an abundance of free and accessible content: books, videos, courses, podcasts, communities. The hard part isn't finding information. It's applying it consistently. It means saying no to immediate gratification, resisting social pressure, staying focused while others keep consuming and complaining. That's why, more than just reading about finance, you must change who you are with money. 4. Financial education is action. You can understand everything about compound interest, but if you never invest, it changes nothing. You can know the difference between assets and liabilities, but if you keep financing luxuries, you stay stuck. Financial education only transforms you when it moves from theory to practice. Start small. Track your expenses. Make your first $100 investment. Read 10 minutes a day. Build one new habit per week. The most important thing is movement, not speed. 5. Financial education is the most powerful asset you can own because it never devalues, travels with you anywhere in the world, applies to any economic environment, multiplies when shared, protects you in crises, and propels you in growth cycles. You could lose everything, but no one can take away what you know, and what you know can rebuild and surpass any loss. At this point in the video, you already have a privileged vision. You see what's coming. You recognize the risks. You spot the opportunities, and you know what must be done. The difference between you and the majority is that you are now aware, and with awareness comes responsibility to act, to change, to prepare, to thrive. In the next and final chapter, we'll conclude this journey with one decisive question. When the next big crisis hits, which side will you be on? Freedom lies in preparation. After everything we've covered so far, one thing should be crystal clear. The world is changing, and it's not going to wait for anyone. Inflation, monetary collapses, unemployment, technological revolutions, political instability, social transformations. These are no longer theories. They are reality. They are happening right now before your eyes. And in this new world, there are only two possible paths: the path of preparation or the path of passivity. Most people will keep waiting, hoping everything returns to normal, clinging to the same habits, the same mistakes, the same excuses. And when the crisis hits hard, because it will, they'll be among those who lose the most. But you don't have to be part of that. You've seen behind the curtain. You understand that the traditional system is broken. You've discovered the real rules that the wealthy and the prepared used to prosper, even in chaos. Now, only one thing remains: take action. Freedom is not an event. It's a construction. It begins with simple decisions. Start tracking your expenses. Replace unconscious spending with conscious investing. Create a second income stream, even a small one. Study for 30 minutes a day. Reevaluate your beliefs about money. Learn to negotiate, sell, and build businesses. Step out of your comfort zone and build your own system. None of these steps require luck. All of them require choice. Because in the end, it all comes down to this. When the next crisis hits, and it will hit, there will be two types of people in the world. Those who say, "No one warned me," and those who say, "I was prepared." The difference between them won't be intelligence or talent or degrees. It will be awareness, decision, and action. You can continue to be led, or you can choose to lead. You can cling to blind hope, or you can build your own security. You can repeat the old patterns, or you can become the turning point for your generation. This is your chance to break free from autopilot and take control, to transform information into transformation, to use the crisis as a catapult, not as an anchor. Financial freedom isn't about money. It's about the power to choose, choosing how to live, who to work with, what to do with your time. And only those who plant today what they want to harvest tomorrow achieve it. So, the final question is simple. When the next crisis comes, will you be one of those who lose everything, or one of the few who emerge stronger, wealthier, and freer than ever? The decision is yours, and it begins now. If you've made it this far, leave a comment. I am getting prepared. This will seal your commitment to this new phase and connect you with others who are also walking this path. This is your moment, because most people still don't know what's coming, but you do, and you're ready to act.